Kenyan opposition leader Raila Odinga says he is open to dialogue with incumbent President Uhuru Kenyatta if the talks will be about holding fresh elections. Odinga called for the boycott of the repeat presidential elections that took place on Thursday following his decision to pull out of the race. The former Prime Minister claims that the Electoral Commission is biased towards the ruling Jubilee party. Our correspondent Sarah Kimani spoke to National Super Alliance leader Raila Amolo Odinga. She began by asking him why the NASA party decided to pull out of the elections.
First, begin with the Supreme Court ruling. It was hailed as a landmark ruling not only in Kenya, but on the African continent. Indeed, it was only the fourth time that a presidential election had been overturned by a court. And we all appreciated this and said, well, this is probably the beginning of our electoral democracy. Immediately thereafter, we petitioned the Electoral Commission to rectify things that we discovered went wrong, areas where the rigging had been done, so that the field could be level. We reduced this into a document. We called it reducible minimum conditions that needed to be met by the Electoral Commission. It was a 12-point document. It was buttressed by the EU observer missions, also recommendations. Theirs were 18 points which needed to be addressed. We started, of course, the campaign, but as you know, that campaign was largely done during the last period. So we were basically just putting up the structures. But to our disappointment, the Electoral Commission refused to budge to address those issues completely. The issues to do with the printing of ballot papers and all the electoral materials. We wanted it to be removed from the company called Al Ghurair from Dubai, which had printed fake documents and also printed 2 million extra ballot papers. Then we also said the transmission of the results had been found to be faulty. There's this company called Otimofo, which had been contracted to set up the Kenya integrated electronic management system. And there was transmission from the polling stations to the portal, which was housed in the cloud, but based in France. We had at first wanted this portal to be housed in the country. But not only that, we found that these results had not actually been transmitted to the tallying centers at the constituencies or to the National Tallying Center. So we left a lot to be desired. We wanted this company to be changed. That also was not done. Then there were officials who had hacked into the system and altered the results into that system nearly 10,000 times. In other words, they changed the results which had come from the polling stations in the electronic system. These officials we wanted to be prosecuted or relieved of their duties. There were those officials who had committed perjury by swearing false affidavits in court, including the chief executive and some senior officers in the Electoral Commission. All these officers remained intact in place. So when taken together, we realized it was going to amount to doing the same thing, the same way, expecting different results. And we realized that would not happen. So therefore we say that instead of tainting our image, going to a flawed process once again, it will be better to save the taxpayer, to take the Kenyan voter, to save them the time and money by us not participating in the elections.
But this was your last shot. So isn't it a political suicide? You are on the ballot, you are not participating.
This is not a Raila Odinga election. This is an election for the people of Kenya. And we are saying that we do not want to institutionalize election rigging. So we said that it is basically a very bad example for the future generation of our nation. If we try to institutionalize what we call electoral autocracy in the country. So we said, therefore, that it's better to stand on principle and sacrifice our interests in the greater good of our people.
The elections went on, however, and the rerun seems very successful. As we speak now, President Kenyatta has 7.2 million of the total votes cast. How would you classify, as the NASA party, how do you classify the rerun, which is about to be concluded any day today?
Well, you can call it as Uhuru versus Kenyatta. He was running alone. I don't even know why, having withdrawn from the race, the Electoral Commission still had the impudence to have my image on the ballot paper, because I gave them notice more than 16 days before the polling. That just shows you basically the kind of conspiracy. But now what is happening is it is now Uhuru running against the turnout. That's what is happening. As you can see, that the turnout was very low. From official records we have from the KIMS kits, where people were biometrically identified, there were only 3.5 million people turned up to vote. But now Uhuru has clocked 7.2 million. So he's again running against himself.
So you think it's a charade, it's a sham?
It is a sham, it's a charade. You ask yourself, since he was just running alone, why is it necessary for the Electoral Commission to rig the numbers for him? The numbers don't even matter. You would say that, well, because he was running alone, there was no interest in these elections, so there was low turnout. But now to inflate the figures the way they've inflated the figures shows you that the Electoral Commission has not changed. If he had been running, that is exactly what they would have done to us. So this Electoral Commission is completely compromised and cannot be relied upon to deliver credible elections.
Even as you continue to complain and to contest what is happening now, President Kenyatta is likely to be announced winner either today or tomorrow.
That is something right. I mean, it's fine. It is an issue of legitimacy. It's not a question of being announced as the winner. That can be done any day. Could have even been done before. But is it going to be legitimate? Will Kenyans believe that he was really genuinely elected? Does he command the confidence and support majority of the people of this country? That, in my view, is the question.
So with that in mind, then, will you move to court again?
No, it doesn't have to be Raila Odinga going to court. There are several Kenyans who can go to court to challenge its legitimacy. So what I'm trying to say is we are in a crisis and we must accept it. The sooner we accept that it's a crisis, the better for this country. See? Because, look, we have a nation, we have a people, particularly the youth of this country. What example are we showing them? See? How do you want these youths to grow up? You know? Because the moment people lose faith and confidence in the electoral process, then anarchy becomes the order of the day. Yes.
Somebody else will say then, what are you teaching the youth of the country when you tell them to go out on the streets to protest, when you tell them to boycott an election? Are you not disenfranchising them? Are you not setting them out on the streets for bloodshed? We've seen just in the last few days, since Thursday, 8 young people have died in protests. So either way, are you also not letting your people down?
I am trying to teach my people constitutionalism, that they can stand up to impunity, that they don't just have to be meek and allow other people, what you call the mighty, to have their way, that there are other ways of dealing with these issues, that you can protest And protesting is actually guaranteed in our constitution. It is there in our human rights chapter. The right to picket, the right to demonstrate, the right to strike, the right to boycott are all guaranteed in our constitution. So these youth are exercising their democratic rights. It is the state which is unleashing terror on the innocent population that is guilty, not the other way around. So these youth are not wrong. They are protesting against what they think is right, is wrong. But then the government is now trying to militarize the governance. You see there's too much reliance on security forces, police, with orders to shoot to kill. This, in my view, is barbaric. It must be condemned in the strongest terms possible.
Should we probably expect then more bloodshed, more militarization, considering you have now converted NASA into what you're calling a resistance movement? Maybe just explain to us, what form will this resistance take?
You see, resistance does not necessarily have to be armed. It doesn't have to be violent. It's peaceful resistance. Like the civil rights movement in the United States, led by the late Dr. Martin Luther King, was a resistance movement. The Mahatma Gandhi movement that brought independence to India was a resistance movement. It was peaceful resistance against an unlawful authority. So people have a recourse to civil disobedience against a government that does not enjoy the mandate of the people. So this is what we're talking about.
But to what end? Kenyans are saying, we're tired, 700 billion shillings is being lost every day, we want to move on. Can we just conclude this and let the country get on?
It depends on which Kenyans you're talking to. Which Kenyans are tired? Kenyans are tired of this illegitimate regime. That's what they are tired of, and they want to have their rights. That's why you can see that the youth are impatient. The youth are ready to come out any day on the streets. We are the ones who are restraining them, because we believe that there are better ways of dealing with these issues. So we have not said that we are going to take up arms to fight. We have only said that we are creating a resistance movement wing within NASA. I think we're going to elaborate more. We have got one wing of NASA, which is parliamentary. We have a parliamentary party, which we've got members of parliament in the National Assembly and in the Senate. But we now have created another arm, which is national resistance, which is going to deal with issues like boycotts, like strikes, like demonstrations, like picketing, and so on. So those are tools and weapons which are available to any movement that want to bring about change in the country.
You said there are better ways of dealing with the issues, the political crisis that faces the country. On Thursday, when we spoke to President Kenyatta, just after he'd cast his ballot, he said he's willing to reach out to you and he's extending a hand of friendship. Would you be willing to also reach out, sit down and have dialogue? You've done it before with President Kibaki.
You see, I asked that we talk before we went to the ballots. They said they were not ready to talk. And they even went as much as coming up with very insolent remarks that I was looking for half a loaf, when we only wanted to talk about the level playing field for the elections. They were not willing to listen to anybody. They said they're not ready to any discussions. Okay? So it will depend on what is supposed to be discussed. Okay? What is it that they're going to put on the table?
What do you want to see discussed then?
We want to discuss the issues of how to have credible elections, credible presidential elections within 90 days.
12 billion shillings has already been spent. Before that, $45 billion. You want to take Kenyans through another election?
You see, but we told them they didn't have to spend that money. First, my dear, elections, this kind of, does not even need to cost 3 billion shillings. That is money which is going to people's pockets. Okay? Those are kind of the problems that we're talking about. The wastage that we go through. That's why these things have to be printed in Dubai by Al Ghurair, because people who represent Al Ghurair, commissions are being paid there. Even this Optimofo was single-sourced, again, billion shillings. You see, something that should have cost, by the estimates of experts within the Electoral Commission itself, 800 million shillings. It's contracted for 2.3 billion shillings. So all that sum total is part of the problem. Okay?
So you're saying you don't need, the only thing you can discuss with President Kenyatta is another election.
I've just said that is our preoccupation right now. That's what we are talking about. But we've been talking about election all this time, and that's what we want to discuss. If that had happened before these elections, the result would have been out now. Maybe I would have lost, or maybe I would have won, the other way around. So whoever, if I'd won, Kenyatta would probably have congratulated me. If he had won, I would have congratulated him. And that would be the end of it. See? But the way we are here right now, we are in a stalemate. It's a waste of time. That grandstanding, because might is right. And then you can see what they're doing, blackmailing the judiciary. See, what they're trying to do right now is to destroy the institutions of governance. Immediately after the ruling of the Supreme Court, they started by an attack on the judiciary, calling them crooks, committing a judicial coup d'etat. We're going to deal with them when you go back. And then, true enough, true to their word, using the so-called tyranny of numbers in parliament, because now they have a meek, compliant parliament. They went and then now brought in this electoral laws amendment, which clipped the wings of Electoral Commission, even the judiciary, okay, which have now become law, by the way. So those are some of the issues that will also have to be discussed on the table, that those laws must be repealed immediately. So they have, last week you saw the judiciary refuse to hear a petition by basically absenting themselves. Those judges had been blackmailed, you know. There have been, we saw that the driver of the Deputy Chief Justice was shot to send a signal to her that she was in danger. Who will not be then in those circumstances frightened? Then the others just absent themselves so that the case collapses. So that's where we are. They are in the process of trying to destroy the judiciary. They have already destroyed. The Electoral Commission has imploded. You can see first the revelations of one of the commissioners who resigned, Madam Akombe. Then admission by Chebukati himself that he was not able to deliver credible elections on the 26th itself. So whatever remained of the Electoral Commission in terms of credibility is all gone. It's in tatters.
So what should we expect you to announce tomorrow? You've said you have a major announcement tomorrow.
That is an announcement for tomorrow. So it's not for today. What is for tomorrow is for tomorrow, not for today. Okay? That it's not really me announcing. This is announcement by the movement, by NASA. So this is still in the works. But we'll speak tomorrow. Or it depends on when the IBC will announce the final results. If they don't announce it by tomorrow, then even our announcement will not be made. Our announcement is dependent on
the announcement by the Electoral Commission.
Yes.
Thank you very much for having us. But just before we go, how does one heal a country like Kenya, which is so deeply divided along ethnic lines. You hold sway in one side of the country, President Kenyatta holds sway in the other part of the country. The continent is watching. We were mediators in South Sudan, Somalia, the Democratic Republic of Congo, but slowly by slowly the country is losing its stature. So how does the country then find its place again as we wind up?
First, it's a very simplistic view which is propelled by the media, that people vote along ethnic lines, that the whole sway in one half of the country, sway in the other half of the country. That is not true. As you look at, Anna said people should not vote. My call was heeded in almost all over the country. You see, there's a low turnout virtually all over the country, not only. See, and if you look at the, I get votes in Nyanza, in Western Province, in parts of the Rift Valley, in the coast, in part of Eastern Province, the Northeastern Province, here in Nairobi. How then can you say that people are voting for me because of my ethnicity? See, the Somalis who vote for me have nothing to do with the Luo, the Kambas, the Mijikendas, the coast, the Bajunis in Lamu, the Lohias in Western Province, the Turkanas, the Masais, all these people, the Rakas and the Merus, all these are not people of my ethnic community. So this idea that people vote along ethnic lines, the can is torn along ethnic lines, it's just a media propaganda. It is not correct at all. The key is vote for me, Nyanza. So I enjoy a wide-based national support, and people vote for me because of what I represent, not because of my ethnicity. And you know that where you're sitting, this has been my constituency for the last 20 years. I've been a member of parliament for Langata constituency, the greater Langata, where you got the face of Kenya. You see, the white, the red, the black, the brown, the Muslim, the Christian, the traditionalists, they all live here. They all vote for me. So Kenyan politics actually is ideology-based. Contrary to this oft-propelled idea that, oh, there's no ideologies in Africa. You see, we, for example, are a social democratic movement. And this will be stated very clearly even in our manifesto. You see? And our opponents are right-wing in the extreme. So even ideologically, we have differences, and that's a fact. Yes.
In the first instance, the international observers gave the election a clean bill of health, but in this second rerun, we've seen them taking off, not reducing their numbers. How would you say they have conducted themselves during both the first election and now the rerun?
I would say that the international observers have done a great injustice to elections, not only in Kenya, but I think in Africa generally. I don't think that it should just be a tour of leisure for the international observers, spend a lot of money to come and basically do a peer work for the incumbency. I think they were rushed in making a judgment last time. We tried to explain to them that there was a problem with the transmission of results from the polling stations to the tallying centers. They would not listen to us. But then we told them that, look, what you guys are doing, you can leave the country burning, and then you go with your so-called recommendations. They did not listen, and the rest is now history. So they have come. We have not even bothered this time around to talk to some of them. Some downgraded their missions. Others pulled out because they're saying there was no competition after we withdrew. But apart from these observers, what really has annoyed us most is the role played by the diplomatic community. particularly Western diplomatic community here in the country. They have done a great disservice to this country. Countries which consider themselves friends of Kenya, that they can lead Kenya down the garden path is something that is most disappointing. You see, even in spite of the admissions made by the chairman of the Electoral Commission himself, that he was not able to deliver credible elections on the 26th. One of the commissioners, having resigned because of threat to her life, and gave graphic details of the rot within the IBC. You could see these diplomats, headed by the US ambassador, coming up on Monday, just for 3 days to the elections, and saying that they think that Kenya is ready for an election. You see, I think that this is very irresponsible. In fact, I think inexcusable that this should be happening to countries that consider themselves friends of Kenya. That is most unfortunate and regrettable. And we hope that other African countries will not suffer the same fate.
There is a petition to send you to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, for the deaths that have occurred so far, and you've been cited as an inciter. What is your reaction?
You see, the ICC deals with crimes, okay? And the crimes have been committed by the perpetrators of that violence. People who have been shooting and killing people. I have not been killing people. It's my people who have been killed. How then does somebody take me to the ICC? I am the one who is the complainant. And we are going to complain to the ICC. And we are going to produce evidence to the ICC so that these criminals can be prosecuted.
When do you hang your boots, Mr. Odinga?
I have my boots all the times with me. If I'm not playing them, I'm playing the other shoe.
When do you say it's over, let me now do something else? Politics is not for me.
No, politics. I was born a politician, and I'll die a politician. And we need to know that politics is not just about elective politics. You see, you can do politics in several other ways. Okay, I have been, like now, I've not been in any elective position for the last 5 years, but I've survived. So I don't have to run for an office to be in politics. But politics is aimed at improving the quality of life of the people. And I'll remain a servant of my people. So I will play a role in one way or the other to improve the quality and conditions of living for the people of my country.